Screen Slurps.
Hello and welcome to Screen Slurps, the movie review podcast where we discuss everything that is good, that is bad, and that is savage in the world of cinema. I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Herlocker.
And today she is driving my car. I was just about to get into some song lyrics, and then they just phased my mind.
I was like, that was a weird intro. What were you trying to think of?
Oh, it just came to me. Baby, you can drive my car. Beep,
there we go. There we go.
Beep, yeah. Sorry, Paul McCartney. I was trying to think of the song lyrics, and then I lost it there for a second.
You got it back, though.
I was just so excited to sing it, and then I was thinking about... You know, it also made me think about when I was watching The Wheel of Fortune the other night, and for some reason I was thinking... You
won a brand new car!
That too! Well, I didn't, but...
Well, no, the person on Wheel of Fortune.
Dang it! No, I was thinking if ever I was on a game show, as I watched the TV show, I think, you know, some of these puzzles, they don't seem too hard. Why are they struggling so hard?
Yeah, but the stress of being on
If you were on the show...
Yeah, I think the stress of, like, being on TV and, like, people are like, oh...
They've got seconds to figure out that puzzle as they're standing there, and Pat Sajak is yelling at them like, all right, now which letter is it going to be? What, are you ready to solve? And...
Do you want to hear a fun fact about me?
Yeah.
I was on a Nickelodeon game show in the 90s.
How'd that go?
I did not win.
Oh.
It was like slime time. And I didn't actually go there. I called in. So I was one of the people that did the games on the phone. So I called in and I had to like match things, which is super hard to do on the phone when you can't see like what's on the TV. And yeah, so I lost. I think I just got a bucket hat as a consolation prize.
A bucket hat?
Yeah. But I mean, slime time was a big deal in the 90s. I felt really cool for being on it.
What'd the bucket look like? Just a bucket?
It just had like the Nickelodeon like splat, you know, and said Nickelodeon.
Well, that's cool. I mean... Hey, a Nickelodeon bucket hat, I'd still wear it.
I'm sure my mother kept it. If we find it, I'll ask my mom to look for it and you can have it, Adam.
So this week, we are talking about something far from Nickelodeon, probably literally and metaphorically. We're talking about the brand new film, well, brand new from 2021, Drive My Car. This film was nominated for 2 Academy Awards. That's right, 2. Best Picture being one of them. And Best International Film?
It was nominated for 4 awards.
Oh, 4?
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking of the 2. Like...
Oh, yeah. No. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best International Feature Film.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking of the 2, like, it's the best freaking film you've ever seen in your life awards.
Yeah. It nominated for 4, and it won for
Best International
Feature Film. Yes.
But hats off to this film for just being nominated for 4 Academy Awards.
It was the first Japanese film to ever be nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, that's incredible in itself. Well, what was...
It's a Korean. Parasite's a Korean film.
Thank you.
I knew what you were going to ask. Yes. I can read your mind.
Yeah,
but it is only until recent years that like international films have been nominated for Best Pictures. Yeah, which I think is great.
Yeah, I knew Parasite gained some traction by being nominated for Best Picture.
Well,
and it won.
Yeah,
yes.
It did win.
But before we get into all the details on Drive My Car, we want to talk about something we call our side slurps. That's right, our side slurps. If you're tuning in for the first time, our side slurps are things we've done other than watch our film of the week. Things like watch other TV shows, other movies. Maybe we learned how to ride a bike. You never know with us. We do some wild things. So, Laura... What are some of the side slurps that you have been doing this past week?
Okay, I've got actually a lot of good things, but I'm going to keep it to a minimum so I don't spend forever talking about the things I've done. Firstly, let's talk about the TV shows that I watched because that's important. Number 1, Bridgerton, season 2. So good. Adam actually watched it with me, so we can have... I know you have feelings about this also. I will say, I don't think season 2... I didn't feel like I liked it as much as season 1, but maybe that's just because season 1 holds such a dear place in my heart. I still really love season 2. And I thought like the actresses who played Kate and her sister Edwina were perfect. Like the casting of that show is amazing. I have no complaints about that whatsoever. I think the one thing that I'm kind of like iffy about with it is just that they're definitely changing a lot of things from the books, which actually is a good thing because there are some very problematic things that happen in the book and that, you know, as a reader, like we weren't necessarily happy with. So it'll be interesting to see how the show goes, especially with like Eloise's character and, you know, her like romance that happens. I'm excited to see where the show takes it and how different it will be from the books.
Yeah, see, I haven't actually read the books, but I did watch all of season 2 of Bridgerton with you. And I felt as a show, Eloise's character actually played out very sort of out of the loop in terms of like her mentality. She seemed very like unknowing of many things. And I feel that they just sort of wrote her that way.
Like a renegade woman.
Yeah. And I feel they just sort of wrote her that way to be played out like she was very just like she wasn't supposed to know what was going on for the entire series. She was supposed to just kind of play, you know, like she wasn't seeing what was happening until obviously the very end of this series. And maybe I won't spoil anything on the mic just as of yet, but Eloise clearly doesn't know what the main problem is until the very end, as a show should. See,
but that's what's changing. In the books, she doesn't know who Whistledown is, and she's like the last one to know. So having that revealed and already to Eloise in season 2, like that's going to make big changes from the book to the show. So that's like part of the thing where I'm interested to see where they take it and how they do it.
Yeah. And I wouldn't know the differences between the book and the TV show, except the fact that you do. You've read the books, so you're the one telling me all these things. But watching the TV show, I think it plays out just fine because the way that they're writing it, I feel that the characters are paced out just fine. You know, the end of one series plays into another just fine to my eye because I haven't read the books. So
and Anthony and Kate are perfect. Lots of staring longingly at each other and heavy breathing. So that's we didn't get like any sex scenes this season. I mean, one.
There was a couple times where they were trying to show some things, but
they just show tension. Sexual tension.
Yeah.
Anywho, very similar to Bridgerton, I also just finished Gilded Age, which is Julian Fellowes' new show that's on HBO. Listeners, if you know, Julian Fellowes is the creator of Downton Abbey, which I think is one of the greatest television series ever created. So I watched Gilded Age, like really excited because I thought it was going to be like Downton Abbey. I was so excited for it. I definitely have mixed feelings. I've talked to a few friends about this who have seen both series as well. And I think we're all kind of on the same page. There's just something different with Gilded Age. And I think we've talked about this too, Adam. It's because Downton Abbey is set in real places. Like there's an actual old house in England that they filmed in, so it looks of the time period, like there's no CGI whatsoever. Whereas in the Gilded Age, because they're trying to do early America, essentially, like America does not look like that anymore. So a lot of the show is CGI and like fake sets, and you can really tell the difference. It's striking in some scenes, the CGI, and I think that really pulls you out of the show. And like with Downton Abbey, you're immersed and you feel like you are like in that time period. Whereas Gilded Age, I'm like, no, I know I'm watching a show, like, because it looks fake. And I don't know. I also think Downton Abbey did such a good job of like endearing you to the characters, both the wealthy family as well as like the servants in the downstairs. And I just don't think Gilded Age has done that. Like they're definitely trying to show the downstairs characters, but you're not invested in any of them really yet. And even with like the wealthy families, I mean, they have some good like drama happening, but at the same time, you're just not, I don't know, it's not doing it for me like it did for Downton Abbey.
Yeah, I can see that. And I honestly only went through up to season 2 of Downton Abbey, but from what I watched, I thought the show was fantastic. I thought it looked great. I thought the characters were great and incredibly appealing. And I think I only went through season 2 because at the time when I was watching it, that's all that came out. And then I just didn't
keep up with it.
Yeah, I just didn't stay on the bar of watching Downton Abbey. I think it was only releasing on HBO at the time, I think, and I didn't have access to that.
I don't know. Was it on HBO? I know it's like PBS because it's like a masterpiece.
Yeah, it was something
whatever.
like that. But whatever it was releasing on,
Yeah.
I didn't have access to, like streaming access and things like that.
Maybe it's a really good Christmas thing. So maybe we'll watch it around Christmas this year.
Yeah, whoever had access to it, because I was watching it through a friend who had access to what it was streaming on when it was releasing.
Right.
And so I would just go over to their place and we'd watch it when the new episodes would come out. And then the season was over and we were all like, oh, dang it, we'll have to wait till the next season. And then that was when I was in college. And then college was over. And it's like, well, crap.
We'll watch it. We'll watch it together so you can catch up. It's a great show.
When I was watching Downton Abbey, I thought it looked fantastic. I thought the characters were great. And I wholeheartedly agree about the new show. It just does not look the same. And the CGI elements do really suck you out of it. Sometimes you got to applaud people when they use CGI for a show to make it look even better. Or sometimes when the CGI characters don't even look great. Sometimes that's just funny, or it adds another element to the show in a good way. You got to say, it's just like, wow, that is an interesting choice to use something like that, but that's kind of cool. But for a show like this, you look at a scene and you see the very computer generated looking background when it's supposed to look real, and you think, man, that's not right.
Yeah. Anyway, those are the two big things I was watching. I'm watching New Girl. I've never watched it before, so that's kind of like my background show. I put that on when I'm, doing some stuff around the house and stuff. It's fun. I love it a lot. Winston is such an underrated character. But for my book of the week, I just finished Dune, the first original Dune by Frank Herbert. We just reviewed, I think the last episode was actually our review of the movie Dune. Yeah, the book, I will say, I'm very glad I've watched the movie recently before reading the book, because the book is very heavy. The book is kind of hard to understand at times. Even after watching the movie and knowing how things work, reading it, I was like, what is happening right now? So it was.
Where's Timothée Chalamet when you need him?
Honestly, it was a bit of a struggle to read, but I got through it. So I read Dune. And then for my last side slurp, I just want to talk about something fun that I went to do. So one of my best friends from childhood was just in town, and I haven't seen her in years. And what we did is we went to Aura, which is a candle bar here in Chicago. And it's not a bar like drinking. What that means is that you get to go and they just have like tons of scents, like probably more than 50 individual scents. And you go in and you smell them all, right? And you write down ones that you really like. And then there's like a professional scent person, I don't even know what to call them there, that like
professional sniffer.
Yeah, a sniffer that like works with you to kind of narrow down the scents that you really like and pick out 3 that'll work really well together. And then you get to mix them yourself and make your own candle. So you really decide the scents and like which one you want to go, heavier on, and a hint of this and that. And I made a candle and it smells so good. I'm obsessed with it. The smells in it are old books, which is very on brand for me, Bordeaux, and elderflower.
Maybe people can start going to college to become professional sniffers. I
mean, there's like perfumeries for, perfume and cologne and things. And I'm sure they have like a trade school involved in it, because that's like an art.
I stand corrected.
But I doubt there's a candle one, but maybe there is and we just don't know.
Hey, to go to a perfumery, you probably have to be a great sniffer.
I have a really good nose. I think I could do it.
You could be a professional sniffer.
I could. Anyway, that's all I'm going to talk about for my side slurps. And with that, Adam, what did you do this last week?
I've got a few things up my sleeve. This past week, I have been just really breezing through. And let me start out by saying I never really grew up smothering myself in anime too much. I've got a lot of catching up to do, but I have just overwhelmed myself with the brand new series, Kotaro Lives Alone.
So good.
And went through the entire thing in a matter of days. There's 10 episodes. You can do it all probably in one day if you really wanted to.
Yeah, they're like half an hour.
Yeah, they're half-an-hour episodes. So it doesn't take too long to get through all 10 episodes if you really want to. And I think Laura and I did it in just a few days. It was probably less than a week that we went through the whole thing. But the show is so good and so sad and so happy at the same time.
It's such a good mix. Like you just said, it's a good mix of like being so sad and like wholesome and endearing, but at the same time, it makes you happy to watch it.
It's just Kotaro is such a sad little boy, but at the same time, everyone cares about him so much. And he has such a good outlook on life for other people. He cares about everyone. And everyone else cares for him. Not everybody, but at the same time.
I mean, almost. It's like anyone who meets this kid falls in love with him.
Yeah.
As they should, because he's the sweetest boy.
It is just such a great show to watch. And it really gives you a great perspective on life and other people. Yeah, so,
I'm hoping that it gets picked up for another season.
It should. It really should. That first season did not complete the show.
Oh, no.
So there's so much more than
the manga, I think, is...
like 10
much longer
books.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed watching that show. It really made me happy and really got the wheels of my brain turning, thinking about life. So it's shows like that just make me happy to watch, whether they're anime or whether it's a real life sort of drama, things like that. I highly suggest checking it out. It's on Netflix. So definitely happy I saw that. To continue on, I'm very happy to say I finally finished reading Eric Nussum's book, Make Noise,
Everyone,
a Creator's
clap for
Guide
Adam.
to Podcasting and Great Audio Storytelling. Thank you very much, Eric, for authoring that book. It's a fantastic read. Lots of knowledge to be had from reading that book. And yeah, it's just great. I'll go back again, I'm sure, and look through the notes and things like that in that book. And I've moved on now to reading reality radio, telling true stories in sound, and just it's great to read from more and more of my favorite, audio artistes. I wanted to say auteur, but
that sounded so fancy. Audio artiste.
Audio artiste. Yeah, like I said, I wanted to say auteur. That's a film term, though. That's a film director terminology.
Can it not be used for other mediums?
I don't know, man. And then, that's the big stuff. Other than that, just playing some music and making some recordings. And I got a brand new mixer. That's right, people. You heard it from me. That's why we've been on a little bit of a delay as I upgraded my Mac OS to Monterey, the brand new OS. It's not new really anymore. I waited forever to upgrade because I thought I couldn't upgrade before. Due to some software issues. Now the software tells me that you can upgrade and everything will be okie dokie. I did that, and surely enough, my mixer stopped working when I upgraded. So there was a little bit of a delay for us, and I got a brand new recording mixer.
Yeah, now we're back.
And now we are back. So
bigger and better than ever.
Yep. And so we're using the new mixer now with my microphones, and all is good in the world. Very happy to be using that now. And that's the facts. And that is what I've been up to.
That's a fact, Jack. Sorry, I just have these random phrases that keep coming into my
you just keep them going.
My mind today. I don't know what's happening. So let's just move on.
Laura's got the hype today.
Something.
And on that note, I better let her be the one to drive my car, because that is our film this week. Drive My Car, released on November 24th, 2021, and directed by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, based upon the short story Drive My Car by Haruki Murakami, starring Hidetoshi Nishijima, Reiki Kirishima, Park Yu-rim, and many, many more. Many more. I mean, this movie had a good amount of players in it.
Yeah, I mean, because they're filming, the movie is about them producing a play, so you have essentially the main actor and then everyone in the play also. It was quite a big cast.
And I'm not gonna lie, starting off right here, I'm just gonna lay it out there. I was quite surprised by how good this movie was. And it's not like I turned it on thinking, man, this movie's going to suck. But I turned the movie on and I was very taken aback how sucked in I really got into this movie as it went along. Like,
no, I'm going to completely agree with you. Same thing. Like going into this movie, I was like, it's going to be good because everyone was saying it was good. But I wasn't like expecting something fantastic. And after watching it, as a spoiler to the ending, I honestly think this is probably my favorite movie of 2021.
Yeah, I mean, that's already us getting ahead of ourselves before we talk about the entire thing. But seriously, though, this is it was something different from 2021 against most of what was released in 2021. It was just a nice change. And to start getting into it with the introduction of this film, that was one of the bigger surprises of any movie I had seen from 2021, because this movie starts off with an introduction where it opens up. It doesn't open up with the credits. It just opens up with the movie. And that's fine. You do you with your movie. You open up with the movie. That's cool. And the movie starts and it just starts going. And I figure the movie's just going to keep going. We're not going to have opening credits. It's just going to keep on going. And the movie starts to set itself up. And it starts in a bedroom. And it starts with the man is laying in bed. And the woman is sitting up in the bed telling a story. And that's really the basis of the beginning. And really, I mean, Laura, what did you pull from that?
The beginning. So what I found really interesting about this movie and the way it's set up, since you're kind of talking about like the opening credits and things, as you were saying, we kind of have this opening prologue that lasts 40 minutes, really. 40 minutes into the movie, and then we finally get like the opening title card and things. And I thought that was done so interesting because, as I mentioned, the movie is essentially about them create a production of a play. And I feel like this first section is like the first act. You know, like even how the movie is set up, it's set up like with having different acts, just like a play does. So the first act is we're seeing the main character and his wife and like their relationship and what their life is. And then that abruptly ends with something happening. And, you know, we get those opening credits finally. And then we kind of move into the second act.
I thought that was nice, and we really don't understand what the real connection is with the storytelling until much later in the movie. It's really all just a setup in the beginning with his wife telling him this story in the introduction, which is a very important story, by the way. You get this very elaborately told story about this man, or this woman, I should say, this woman who is coming over to this guy's house while he's gone and like trying to steal like a something from him while she leaves something of hers behind, like her underwear.
It's definitely a stalker-esque kind of thing going on.
Yeah, she's really into this guy, but she doesn't want him to know that she's really into him and like really trying to like follow him. But so she comes over while he's gone and will take something of his, but leave something of hers, like something inappropriate of hers, like in one of his clothing drawers. And this is like a premise, she's a screenwriter. And this is like one of her screenwriting stories that she's telling to her husband. And as she's telling this story, she's explaining all of this. And this is the very first thing we hear in this entire film. And so this is like this is the stepping stone of the movie, like the whole platform, the base of the movie that's like setting it up in the beginning, that's going into the rest of the movie.
But really, it's like the movie is not really about him and his wife at all. That's something that kind of kept me, I don't know, on edge, maybe like on the edge of my seat. It's just like from this first act, you really have no idea like what this movie is actually going to be about. You know, like it seems like it's about the relationship between Kafuku, I think that's how you say his name, the main character, and his wife Otto. And, you know, it does seem like in the beginning parts of the movie, the movie will focus on their relationship, which I guess in a sense it does in the long run. But it's just like this weird tension between the two of them. And then things change and you're like, what is this movie actually about?
Which, I mean, it gets explained as the movie
No, yeah, that's what I'm
progresses.
saying. Like, it all comes like together in the end. Looking back on it, you're like, wow, I understand. This movie is about like, this movie, honestly, I feel like is about so many things, like communication and loss and grief and love and, you know, just like understanding of into people. And it's really like a look on relationships. There's so much that's happening in this movie.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing we pick up on very quickly is that the main character, Kafuku, his wife, is cheating on him with other men. And he can see that one day when he comes home and sees his wife having sex with another man.
And he just like slowly backs away.
Just slowly backs away and just goes off
to a hotel.
and does something else.
Yeah.
And doesn't bring it up to his wife at all that he saw the whole thing. He just, you know, just goes on like life is normal.
Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of wondering, that sets it up where you're like, is this a normal occurrence? Or is it the first time he's seen it and he just doesn't know how to react? So he just didn't want to make like a confrontation, and that's why he left.
Yeah, I guess that's a thought too. I feel like he's seen it more than once though.
That's true, because he didn't look like he had like a shock on his face. It just looked like he was
just like it's just another time.
Again.
Yeah.
You know, it's happening. And he just kind of goes away. And what I wonder then too is after he sees that, his wife calls him and she says like, can we talk when you get home? And then you're wondering like, is she going to say that she wants to leave him or that she's unhappy? And she's finally going to admit that she's like sleeping with all these other men. But by the time he gets home, she unfortunately is dead on the floor. So you never know like what she wanted to talk to him about.
Yeah, and I think that's because later on he admits that he came home late, that like he didn't come home early to talk to her. He came home later that day.
Well, that's one of the things about regretting, you know, having regrets in life, right? He's like, what if I had been home 10 minutes earlier? Could I have saved her?
Yeah.
You know, there's always that thought in your mind, like, what if I had done this or that differently? Like, would she still be alive now?
And this is all just part of the introduction.
Yeah, all this happens.
All this happens in the whole movie.
That just happens
40
in
minutes
the
of the
first
movie.
act.
And then you get the introductory credits of the movie. As in, if this were any other movie, they would show the credits of the movie as pretty much the first thing you see, or in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the movie. They show you all of this in the first 40, like they show 40 minutes of the movie and then show you the credits.
Mm-hmm. I like that they did that though.
Yeah, I think that was a very smart move on their part to set this movie up basically with a movie of its own.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the character development we got in that first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Even just on the main character himself, like, because he's obviously the only one that kind of continues on into the next, you know.
It was almost like its own short film divide. And then it's like, okay, now here's the intro credits. And now you get the rest of its own part 2 series, basically.
So essentially what we learn in the first part is that Fuku is like a stage actor. And he also is like a producer of plays, and they're done in different languages. So one character within their production could be speaking Japanese, another one could be speaking Korean, another one, you know, and we see that because he's doing a few plays, and he's married to Otto, who is a like scriptwriter, a screenwriter for television. She's cheating on him. He sees it, you know, they kind of have like, I'd say it seems like at times their relationship is just that they're very distant from each other. But then at the same time, like she relies on him because as you were explaining how it opens up, like she needs sex as a way that like gets her in the mind to come up with the ideas for her screenwriting. So that's what we're seeing in the beginning is she's like spouting off this idea to him. And the next morning, she'll never remember it. So he has to like retell it to her. So even though their relationship is kind of distant in ways, at the same time, like they rely on each other a lot. And then unfortunately, she passes away. And then, you know, we get the opening credits and then the movie really starts and it's like 2 years later or 5 years later. However,
I think it was like 2 years later.
2. I'd say there's definitely a time gap And then it's really like what the movie is about. We get in this next part.
Yeah, and I think it was really cool too to see Kafuku was introduced to this young television actor through his wife in the introduction. And I think he was the one who was having sex with his wife when he walked in on it
Koji
the first time. Or, you know, what we, the audience, saw him walk in on his wife having sex with somebody else. And then after his wife passes away and the play that he is directing and casting for, he becomes one of the people that is auditioning for this play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy to see all of the people that are auditioning for the play that he's directing and the people that he ends up casting for his play.
Yeah. So, I mean, we should kind of explain a little bit. So it's like 2 years later, and Kafuku is going to Hiroshima to direct like a production of Uncle Vanya, which is a really well-known like classical, I think he's Russian or something, playwright. And again, he's doing another production that's like multilingual. I think I was seeing, and the languages spoken by the character, like the actors in the play, there's Japanese, Korean, Mandarin, and Korean Sign Language, which the sign language bit I thought was like the coolest thing to have in this movie. But so for this part of the movie, like I was saying, Fuku, it's like 2 years later after his wife has died, he is in Hiroshima producing a multilingual production of Uncle Vanya. And as part of his work there with the theater, he's not allowed to drive himself. So he's given a driver who is this young girl,
which he does not want at all.
Very against it at first. And I think he's so against it because the car for him is like a safe space where he can kind of be himself. Because he even asked purposely for his hotel or where he was staying to be like an hour away. Mm-hmm. So he would have an hour commute. And it's because he used that time to like repeat his lines. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a very therapeutic thing for him. So he was so against having a driver because he thought that would disrupt his time. Right. But like through the driving, the two of them really start to connect and like understand each other. And they have like very similar kind of circumstances in a way. And yeah, it's just lovely to see like the relationship between him and Watari, the young girl who drives him. Yeah.
I thought it was really cool to see how he would utilize his time in the car to rehearse his lines, because I don't know why I would never think to, rehearse lines in a car. But as soon as I heard him start doing that, I thought, wow, what a very smart guy to be listening to his lines on tape, or not listening to his lines, but rehearsing his lines to the other lines on tape. That would be fantastic practice for any actor to be rehearsing lines on tape in a car.
Yeah. And fun fact. So, you know how in the movie, he has all of the actors for most of the time, they're just sitting at a table, like reading their lines with no emotion. They're just kind of reading the lines so they can, because it's in different languages. So you don't know what the other person's saying. You kind of have to hear that, and the actors start complaining because they're like, we want to be moving. We want to feel these characters. And he's like, no, you have to do the lines without emotion. You need to like learn the lines before you can really get into anything else. And actually, the director of the movie, it's very similar to like his own process of how he makes film. So he'll do the same thing. He'll have the actors just read the lines like over and over and over again without emotion. And he says he does that because then it helps the character. If knowing the lines is like second nature to them, then he thinks it's so much easier for them to start getting like the body movements and the idea of the character, because they don't have to think about the lines. It's like memory. They don't need to think about it, so they can focus on like actual movements and like invoking the character. I thought, and that's such a cool process. Like, I don't know if a lot of people do that kind of process, and I liked that even that's what he does in real life. And he used that in the movie also.
I think that's really smart too. I think that's a very wise thing to advise to other people, because once you get the lines down just like that, just like second nature, then yeah, just as you're saying, then you could do whatever you want with it, really. You
Yeah.
could just be saying the lines like the back of your hand, and you could be acting however you want for it.
Well, then it seems like you are that character, you
Yeah.
know, and that helps the viewers too. And I think it's such a big deal too when you have characters that are speaking different languages. Because as a viewer, someone watching the actual production, you would probably know one of the languages being spoken, but you wouldn't know what else is going on. So you're relying on like body movements and kind of the inflection of their voice and things like that. So having, you know, the focus, being able to like be so well at that, I think is so helpful in understanding as a viewer.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes along with what I was saying is like, I loved that there was Korean Sign Language within this movie. The actress, she was so emotional and like her signing, you know, and I think that's normal for people who do sign. There's so much that goes into how you see what they're signing, not even just like what the sign is, but the way they do it, right? Same thing as like where we raise our voices, you know that we're being like more animated or excited or angry. And like the way that they do the signs, you can tell an emotion from that as well. It was just beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see how they incorporated sign language in this film. And interesting to think that this movie incorporated sign language as well as the film Coda, which was also nominated for Best Picture. It's the year of films incorporating sign language into them.
Which is great. I mean, it's so nice that we're finally getting some more diversity. I know there's diversity in film, but films are actually being like acknowledged, I guess I'll say, you know, are movies that have different languages and different cultures. And yeah, so having two movies with sign language,
don't be
is great.
afraid to open up the palette here and, you know, accept like having actors and actresses and just people of different backgrounds and, you know, diversity, the key word that I'm going to use there, just like everything, everyone is acceptable of, you know, of use in a movie, you know? Like,
yeah, definitely.
I think it's interesting. I found a little bit of background on the director's use of sign language in the film. I believe the director was saying this paragraph that I found. It says, "I became interested in sign language when I was invited to a deaf film festival where they communicated in sign language. I really felt like an outsider. I also realized sign language is a much more physical and more expressive language than I thought. In order to sign to each other, they have to look at the other person closely because they can't understand unless they look. I remember being really observed while I was there, and I had this feeling that if someone's looking at me with such depth, it means that if I were to lie, then they could see through my lie." And he also says, "I think that using sign language and expressing oneself openly are very much connected. So when I decided to adopt this multilingual play, I didn't want to use sign language as a language of disability. I really wanted to use sign language as just another language. I was looking for someone to play this role, and I came across Park Yoram and felt that she was such a wonderful actor."
She was great.
And that's all he said on that.
No, that's so interesting. Kind of what I was saying. Like, it's just so expressive. Like, you can really get the emotions out of how they sign specifically.
Yeah, it's just fantastic to see the usage of sign language in this. And I love the way that he also connected it by, you know, the actress that was playing the not the real in life, like real life actress, but in the movie,
The woman, yes.
the actress that was playing the woman using sign language was the character was the wife of the mechanic, the guy who was
like the assistant director.
Yeah, the assistant director.
Mechanic.
That's something I read on the internet.
No, he's like the assistant director.
I read it from Google. So
there's no mechanic in this movie.
blame the internet.
Yeah, no, she was a really great actress. I mean, Watari also, the driver, she was a great actress. And she didn't speak much. She was great in her silence, which I think says so much about this movie too. Like, the silence is more important than the actual speaking, I feel like. You can tell, like, there's something about her. She's very solemn, like she's been through some hard times. And we learn that, like, she had a horrible childhood. Her mother was abusive. And, driving was kind of her escape. The same thing with the main character, Kafuku. It was both of their ways to escape. And yeah, she was abused by her mother, and then her mother dies in a mudslide, and she's kind of left on her own at like 18 to fend for herself.
But she could have rescued her mother, I think, if she wanted to go back in there.
Yeah, I think it's finally she does once they, her and Kafuku have been closer, and she goes back to her home to show him. She explains, like, I heard my mom, and I probably could have saved her, but I didn't. And that's how I was saying it kind of relates to Kafuku, too, because his idea of, like, if I had gone home, I could have saved my wife, the same idea. So they both kind of have this regret about, I don't even know if it's a regret, though, but thinking, like, did they kill this person, or like, could they have saved them?
It's things like that really make this movie the deep connection visually for the viewer. And I want to go back before that point in the film. The real climax, I think, of this movie for me, I think there's a few points in this movie that are like a climax. Like, no,
I agree with you.
You watch this movie and there's a few points that once you watch it, you're like, oh my gosh.
There's
like,
a few conflicts.
Yeah. Like, oh gosh, man, this is really hitting hard. But the climax really for me, in a few different ways at a few different points, but the biggest part of the area was, the actor Koji, him and Kafuku in the back seat of the car, what is that car?
It's a Saab.
Yeah, the Saab, the red Saab. We all have to get one now. The two of them in the backseat of the red Saab, they are having a conversation about how Koji is like, he has just got a thing for Otto.
Well, he did.
And I mean, yeah, he did. And Otto, yes, she is not alive anymore, but he's explaining to Kafuku that he had this great interest in her, and he can't help that he was very attracted in her and wanted to know more about her, and they're having this talk about it. And he asked Kafuku if he had heard all of Otto's story about the girl that would go over to the boy's house. And Kafuku explains, yes, I've heard the entire story. And he tells it back to Koji. And Koji responds, no, that's not the entire story. You haven't heard the entire story. And then he starts explaining how the entire story goes. And there's much more to the story that Kafuku hasn't heard, to his surprise. Like
the end. Because what he knew was like ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And then Koji kind of knows how it ends.
Yeah. And the way it actually ends makes it much more depressing.
It's very dark.
To Kafuku. It sounds much less in his favor, in Kafuku's favor. It sounds much more like depressing for Kafuku. And yeah, that makes that sound much worse off for Kafuku. And it makes it much more emotional. And it's just so crazy to hear, and not emotional in a literal sense either, but a much more metaphorical emotional. And it's just crazy to hear that as a story. And then, of course, after all of that, as a viewer, I'm sitting there watching this thinking, dang, like, what is going on in that guy's head now?
Well, that's what, after he told this story and like the ending that he had, I was like, what does this mean? I was trying to think, like, what does it mean to like Otto and her character, or Koji and like how she felt about him.
Yeah, and what did Otto want to talk about?
Yeah, yeah. And you're like, what's happening? It's just, and I still don't know the answer. Like, I'm still like, what's the outcome of knowing this ending now to her story? Like, I don't know. And I think that's good. It's something that we're going to keep thinking about.
Yeah. And then, of course, Kafuku now has to live with that going through his head and continue having this, struggling mind in the backseat of this car with that story until what Laura was just talking about. Kafuku goes with
Watari.
With
Oh yeah, so the reason that they drive out to her hometown is that Koji ends up killing a man.
Yeah,
So
because the man
beat
goes
a
to
man
take
up.
a picture of him.
Someone took a picture of him, so he beat the dude up, and then that dude ended up dying from like the injuries he sustained. So Koji's arrested, and now Kafuku and like the other producers are like, what does this mean for the play? It's either like, Kafuku, you play Vanya, you step in and play the lead role, or we cancel it. And so I think Kafuku is really, he doesn't want to do the role. You know, I think he's kind of past that, and he's like, no, I don't want to do it, but let me think about it. So he just tells Watari, like, take me somewhere. And so they end up driving to her hometown. And that's where we kind of get more about her and her backstory. And I think Kafuku then really starts to see her as like a daughter figure, because we learned too that he had a daughter who died when she was quite young, and she would have been the same age as that Watari is now. And so I think from there he really like sees her then in that role and kind of takes her under his wing as his daughter. That's really like a big turning point in their relationship, I think, when she goes and really like explains about what happened with her mom.
Yeah, and she goes and watches him perform as Vanya. And you can see from the cinematography, it really focuses on not only just the show itself, showing him perform as Vanya and everybody doing the show, but there's a huge focus on her in the audience and her perspective of watching this show, paying attention to it. She's watching him perform as Vanya. And then afterwards, it focuses on her kind of in this like grocery store, picking up some stuff. And she's going back outside to the red Saab. She's got the car now on her own.
Like, again, you're wondering, like, did he gift her the car? You know, and he's like, be on your own. Or are they still maybe like kind of together? Not together in like a weird sense, but in that like he's still like taking care of her kind of thing. I don't know.
I don't know if he would be taking care of her. But
I think maybe he decided he didn't need the car, right? He was like, I've come to terms with my life. I don't need this therapy anymore. And he gave it to her, which I think is very sweet.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was kind of like a release for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those mental, just crazy movies.
It's a thinker.
Yeah.
It definitely makes you think.
And not in a bad way. Like,
no, yeah, in a very good way.
A psychological movie.
Yeah, yeah. Fun fact. In the original story, the car is a yellow convertible. It's still Saab, but it's a yellow convertible. But the director changed it to a red car because he felt like it complemented like the landscape better. And we do have a lot of beautiful wide shots of the car driving like through Hiroshima in the area. So I think he changed it to red because he felt like it had like a better aesthetic. And actually the car, so it's a 1987 Saab 900 Turbo in red. And the director says that like that car is the best casting he'd ever done. Like not even the people. He's like, finding that car is like the best casting I've ever done in this movie.
I thought it was not entirely related to the movie, but the director, I thought it was funny seeing him on the Academy Awards when he was doing his speech when they won Best International, and he comes up there to speak, and then they almost played him off, and he's like, oh, I'm not done yet.
They play him off a few times.
Yeah. Well, they played him off, and he's like, oh, no, I got something else to say. So then he starts talking again, and then they're about to play him off again. He's like, oh, no, I'm not. And then they just like, no, you have to get off.
Yeah, I know. Poor guy. Should have given his time. What other fun facts do I have? I already talked about the wine. Originally, so the film is originally supposed to be set in Korea. So I think Kafuku was supposed to go to Korea to do a production of Vanya, not Hiroshima. But because of COVID, you know, they couldn't travel internationally to Korea. So they changed it to Hiroshima.
Interesting.
Yeah, those are my only fun facts.
There were some very interesting landscapes.
Oh, it was beautiful. There were some beautiful, like, wide shots.
Some very cool looking shots.
Yeah. This movie is just like so. The plot's beautiful.
And we didn't even talk about how good the soundtrack was.
I was about to say, I think we've talked about the movie. Now we need to talk about the other parts, and that is the music.
Yeah, the soundtrack is just so addicting to listen to. You can find it online to listen to. I would say watch the movie first and then maybe jump into the soundtrack.
It's just beautiful. So the score is done by Iko Ishibashi, and she's like an experimental Japanese musician. It's just such a beautiful soundtrack. What I thought was interesting was that the film essentially uses like two main songs, and she just kind of alters those two to kind of fit into different parts of the film. So you kind of have lots of the same motifs happening, just in some different variation throughout the film. I was definitely getting Twin Peaks vibes from the soundtrack. You say something else, but I definitely was getting like Twin Peaks.
I did not hear Twin Peaks sounds from this score. The soundtrack to me sounded, well, the theme sounded like Animal Crossing to me. I say that just because of the melodica, really. When that comes in, it sounds like you're listening a little bit to Animal Crossing, and that is not a diss on the music. I think it is. It sounds so good. But
it's like a good mix between like classical, but it's jazzy, but then it's kind of like quirky because you have that like experimental bit to it.
Yeah. And that's not necessarily me saying the entire soundtrack sounds like Animal Crossing either. It's just pretty much just the opening. But it is so addicting to listen to.
It is really good.
Well, let's jump into some other reviews here real quick. Rotten Tomatoes, our go-to for the general consensus. On Rotten Tomatoes, the score is 96% from the critics and 78% from the audience.
That went down. So I pulled these numbers like right after we'd watched the movie, which is what, maybe like 2 weeks ago now. And when I pulled it, oh no, I guess it's only changed a little bit. I was thinking it was more drastic. It was only like 1% off for each of them. So never mind. But those scores do not surprise me. Do they surprise you?
Horribly surprised. No, I'm not. Honestly, no, I'm not surprised. And I would say 96% from the critics, then, clap, clap, clap to the critics.
The audience score is a little low, but I do think the movie is very, like all good movies are now, is quite slow paced, and general audiences don't necessarily like that. I
sadly have to agree with you that many people in today's society just don't have patience when it comes to movies.
So I'm sure that's why it's 78.
Yeah. Which I got to say, listeners, if you're listening to this and you can't sit through a movie that's, 2.5 hours long, get with the times, because a lot of movies these days are not like they used to be, where they'd only be an hour and a half or something. And if that's what you're looking for, Ernest Goes to College is streaming, I think. So, you can pull it up, and that's a little short. So
I think the slow pacing in this movie does it justice, though. Like, it's good for the movie because it's like the slow pace. It really draws you in, and like you connect with the characters so much more and like empathize with them. There's just this whole like aura that you get from watching. I don't know. I think the slow pacing is a benefit to this movie.
That is the purpose of this movie. It's a psychological drama, not a psychological thriller.
Yeah.
The point is not to watch people get stabbed and shaken. And this is not a Christopher Nolan film. This movie is, so that you can go on this psychological trip of, learning and empathizing and, watching this to, basically go into the theater with a notepad or something. I don't literally do that. I'm just saying that to say, like, you're going to watch this movie and you're going to think, and you're going to be learning about these characters and their emotions. You don't actually have to take notes, but I'm just trying to say here that this is the kind of movie where you're going to watch it and you're going to be thinking like, whoa, like on a personal level.
Yeah. This
isn't the kind of movie where you go in and you're like, whoa, there's a car chase. That's not the kind of movie this is. Those movies exist.
But not this one.
Yeah.
I actually have two really good quotes from like reviews that I saw. And unfortunately, I didn't write down who wrote this. So I'm really sorry, whoever did these reviews. But the one that I think really like plays into this well is that they say, Drive My Car's imposing runtime holds a rich, patiently engrossing drama that reckons with self-acceptance and regret. So you're like, that slow pace is for a reason, people. So you connect with the characters.
There's another person here, right on Rotten Tomatoes, that left a quote, a review.
Is it a bad one or a good one?
No, a good one. Here she says, Drive My Car is a mesmerizing film that stays with you long afterwards. Its rhythm and pace enfolds the viewer, by the end, you see how necessary and fitting that 3-hour journey was and how much it encompassed.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Well, these are other people saying these things.
But we back it up.
Hey, you're saying that a little too early. We haven't even gotten into our gist of things. So, but you know, what am I saying? Why don't we just jump to it? A skip and a hop away we are. So without further ado, I must say it's time we get into our slurps up or slurps down. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, people of all ages. Slurps up means we recommend the movie. We think it's great. It's fantastic. We recommend you check it out. And a slurps down means what are we talking about? This movie's garbage. This movie is trash. Light the entire film strip on fire and never watch it again. Laura.
So violent.
I mean, what more needs to be said? Laura, do you give this movie a slurps up or a slurps down?
I don't know that I can say much more than we've already said throughout this episode. Obviously, I give it a slurps up. As I said in the beginning, I think this is probably my favorite film of 2021. The acting, the visuals, the music, the pacing, like everything was done perfectly. I think this is a beautiful film, and I honestly want to watch it again and again because I feel like the more times I watch it, the more I'm going to like know about the characters and understand things. There is nothing bad I can say about this movie. That's my opinion. So slurps up all the way.
Yes, and I sort of spilled the tea early on in this episode with my opinion on this movie, where I agree 100% with Laura's opinion on this film as well. I will give this movie a slurps up, and literally pretty much verbatim on everything Laura just said. This movie, I think, really has little to no flaws about it. I mean, for 2021, for what it is, this movie is just fantastic to watch if you can handle our genre review that we gave it. Of, you know, the pacing, it is a little bit slow. It's not an action film. It's not, you know, Gone in 60 Seconds with Nick Cage. This movie is not that kind of Drive My Car. It is a very different kind of film than that. However, if our description of what this movie is something that you can get behind, yeah, definitely check it out. Like we said, and like the evidence shows, this movie won Best International Film at the Academy Awards. Should have won Best Picture.
Actually, we haven't seen all of them, so we can't really say that. But
yeah, but we'll be checking out all of the movies that were nominated for Best Picture. But this film is a fantastic film, and I am so happy that it was even nominated for Best Picture because it was so good. It is so good. And there's so much to be mentally taken in when you watch this movie on so many different levels, not just from what the characters are saying, but from what you are watching visually, from the character that is doing the sign language, from the characters that are talking about, you know, their life, their problems, their successes, everything that's going on in their lives. And how they are having a relationship, good, bad, ups and downs, everything that's going on in that movie, and how they are, you know, just making it work, you know, or what is not working. It's that kind of movie, just life and its problems and what's going to happen next. And to see a movie like that, it's just, you got to take it all in. So I am so happy I watched this movie. And I cannot forget watching this movie. I will not forget this movie. It's probably one of my favorite movies now that I will never forget. So that is a strong statement that I just made, and I will back it up for the end of time.
Well, back it up.
So please watch this movie. I give it a slurps up, and that is a fact, Jack, on that one. With that being said, that wraps it up for this episode of Screen Slurps. Be sure to follow us on social media at Screen Slurps on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Ghana, or just about any other podcast streaming service out there. And if you enjoy what you hear, slide on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. It will help us a lot. And if there's any crazy movies that you want to hear about, please let us know. Leave a comment on one of our social media pages, and trust me when I say, we will be sure to talk about it. So closing out, I'm Adam Meisner.
And I'm Laura Herlocker.
Slurps up, and we will catch you later.
Later.